Alright, so today I want to talk about 10 things that you can do during the easiest time of the year breeding ball pythons. And you're probably wondering, what is the easiest time of the year? And for me here in my reptile room, it's just around the corner, just a few weeks away. I actually started pairing up my males and my females about 2 months ago, and I've been cycling my males through my females. And you get to the point where the females will start building eggs and they'll eventually completely go off of food where they won't eat anything. Even if you offer them some food, they definitely won't eat it. And sometimes they'll actually stop eating for months at a time, sometimes 2 or 3 months until they finally lay those eggs. And a lot of times the males will go off of food too. So you have a lot of ball pythons here in the reptile room that will be pretty much zero maintenance. The only thing you really have to stay on top of is keeping enough humidity in the enclosures and making sure that they have water. But other than that, it is pretty much no work at all, which is pretty awesome. And a lot of times you'll actually have a lot of free time when you can work on some other things. And I kind of want to just show you my top 10 list of some of the things that I work on here in my reptile room when I have a little bit of free time during this easy time breeding ball pythons. When it gets busy, let me tell you, one of the hardest parts of the year is one of the most exciting parts is when you're actually pulling eggs from the females, putting them up in the incubator, cutting open the eggs, and then selling the hatchling to customers. And a lot of times you'll actually be doing all those things all at once. So a lot of times during the bulk of the busy time, you won't have a lot of free time to really sit down and do a lot of the things that aren't really as critical. So I just wanted to go through my top 10 list, some of the things that I do during this time of the year when I have a lot of free time. And the number one thing is to downsize your rodent breeding operation. So I actually breed rats to feed a lot of my snakes here. And a lot of times it's kind of a challenge to produce enough rats to feed all my ball pythons without overproducing too much. And in this time when none of the ball pythons are eating, it's easy to overproduce and have way too many rats. And what I'll actually do is usually during this time, I'll retire a lot of my older females and my older males too, and I'll pretty much replace them with younger ones and kind of go through and replenish my breeding operation as far as my rats. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll pull most of my males from my females so the females don't produce anymore for the next couple months, and then I'll just slowly raise up the other ones. It's a good time to switch them over. And then another thing to keep in mind, if you're breeding mice for your hatchlings, you might want to increase the production of your mice and increase the amount of frozen thawed mouse hoppers in your freezer if you're actually going that route. I actually got to the point about 2 years ago when I ran out of mouse hoppers. I had like 100 hatchlings, and let me tell you, 100 hatchlings can eat an incredible amount of mouse hoppers. They'll eat usually like 1 or 2 weeks. If you actually feed them twice a week, that is 200 mice every single week, and that is like 400 mice in a month, which is kind of crazy. You can go through a lot of mice. So a lot of times I'll actually get to the point where if I don't produce enough, I'll have to go online and make an order and ship some in so I have enough mouse hoppers for all my hatchlings. So that's another thing that I've been kind of staying on top of. I downsize my rats, and then I'll increase the production of my mice to get enough in the freezer to handle all the hatchlings that are coming here in a few months. All right, so number 2, one thing you want to check is the backup temperature probes on your racks. So what I actually have on these racks here, I actually have pretty much the typical setup where you have a thermostat plugged into the rack, and then the thermostat actually has a probe that goes on the heat panels in the back. And what I actually do is I have an extra layer of protection. I buy these little tiny heat probes that have alarms on them. They have the high alarm and the low alarm, and I can put them on every single rack, every single row in my rack, and they're really cheap. I can actually put a link below. I think they're just a few bucks, and they're magnetic, so they stick right on the rack, and then you just tape them right on the heat panel in the back. And if something happens, they'll all start alarming. And this is a good time to actually go through and make sure they're all working, make sure they have batteries. And it's kind of interesting because if you look at some of these, the really high-end thermostats on a lot of these racks, they have all the alarms and warnings and everything built in. But the problem is if you actually unplug them and don't realize they're unplugged, you can have them unplugged and they won't alarm or anything unless you have a backup as far as a temperature probe with an alarm on it. So it's kind of cheap insurance to actually put those on and make sure they're working every single year. All right, so number 3, during this time when I actually have a little more time, what I like to do is upgrade some of my equipment. So what I'm actually doing this year, I decided that I'm going to upgrade my humidifier. I have a humidifier here in my reptile room, and let me tell you, that thing, it's like a 1 gallon with the wicking filter, and that thing does not keep enough humidity in my reptile room. It's been driving me crazy. I get so many snakes that have been stuck in the shed when I don't keep on top of adding water to every tub every few days here in my collection. So what I'm actually going to go back to, I went to this once, and let me tell you, it's a lot of work filling a really big humidifier like that. But I figure even if it dries out a little bit, I'll kind of have a mix of a really big humidifier and the humidity in the tubs by adding the humidity and the moisture in the tubs. So I'll kind of have like a backup. This is actually a 7-gallon humidifier. It was pretty expensive, but it's pretty nice. It's actually a top-loading humidifier. So that's one of the things you can actually go through during this time too and upgrade a lot of your racking systems, since a lot of your racks are empty. Pretty much at this point, all my hatchling racks are empty. So if you wanted to go through and upgrade some of your racks, it'd be a good time to do it. All right, so number 4, another thing I like to do during this time is start planning my breeding for the following year, which sounds a little bit crazy to do this early. So I've been pairing up for about 2 months now, and what I like to do, I like to really get an early jump on the next year as far as the breeding. So what I like to do is put all the males and the females in a spreadsheet, and I actually kind of go through and figure out, all right, what haven't I paired together, which would make some really amazing combinations, or what combinations that I've made before do I want to try again. And what I do is I kind of do like a preliminary pairing of all the males and females, and then over the next few months, 4, 5, 6 months, what I'll actually do is I'll keep going back to that spreadsheet and keep rearranging things, and every now and then I'll actually see like a combination over on Morphmarket and I say, hey, that's a pretty awesome combination, I can actually make that, and then I'll go back into my spreadsheet and rearrange it. And then you pretty much get to the point where you go through the busy season where you're just going crazy doing all the different things, pulling eggs and the hatchlings and selling them, and then it seems like right on the tail end of the busy season you'll actually get to the point where you're pairing up snakes again, and you won't have a whole lot of time to think about it. So now is definitely the time to think about all the different pairings for your ball pythons for the following year. All right, so number 5, you want to check your smoke detector batteries. If you have a smoke detector in your reptile room, let me tell you, you definitely should have a smoke detector because there's so much electricity in these racks with all the power strips and everything, and it's pretty cheap insurance just to check the batteries and make sure you have a smoke detector in your reptile room. And number 6, another thing you can do is clean up your reptile show display cases. So here's another thing, if you're actually selling at the reptile shows, a lot of times it can get pretty hectic, and a lot of times what I actually have in my display cases, I have some really nice ARS display cases that are acrylic, and a lot of times after a reptile show, I kind of clean them up a little bit, but not, like really deep clean as far as a lot of those display cases. And a lot of times you'll get a lot of kids coming up with all the fingerprints and the cotton candy and the bubble gum and everything all over your display cases. And a lot of times you just need to sit down and clean them really deep and make sure they're all polished and ready to go. Another thing I like to do with my display cases is I put a little insert in the bottom of every single compartment in my display case. I have a little absorbent material, and then on top of the absorbent material, I usually put a little cutout with my name and my website on there, so you can actually just go over there and you can actually see my name on the insert. And as a matter of fact, I actually have a scanner on there, a QR code. So if you scan the QR code, it actually brings you over to my YouTube channel, which is, I guess I consider my YouTube channel my website. I don't really have a website. I pretty much just do YouTube and Morphmarket as far as what I'm doing here with my operation. All right, so number 7, I look for future projects to invest in, and this is kind of neat. So what I'll do, usually I'll have one spreadsheet with all my future pairings, what I'm going to pair up for the following years, and then what I'll do is I'll make another spreadsheet, and I'll kind of have a wish list as far as, some of the stuff that I want to invest in. A lot of times I won't have the money, or a lot of times, it'll be like way out of my price range, but I'll still put it on my wish list, and I'll kind of arrange it from, the things that are more practical that I can actually honestly afford, down to the bottom, some of the really crazy stuff that I would like to have, but I just can't really afford it at the time. And putting the wish list together can really help you with a lot of future projects as far as what you're kind of looking at. All right, so number 8, you want to clean your hatchling racks and your incubation boxes. So this is another thing I like to do as far as kind of in the busy part of the year. What I do is a lot of times when I'm selling hatchlings, I'll just kind of take the hatchling tub after I sell the hatchling and I'll dump it out, kind of brush out a little bit and just kind of recycle the cup for the drinking water, but I won't really go through and give it a really deep clean. And then during this time when I have a lot of free time, I'll actually go through and just bleach and sterilize all my hatchling racks and my egg incubation boxes and get it all ready for the following year. So number 9, here's one thing you want to do is to consider the future direction of your breeding operation. And a lot of times you don't have a lot of time to really sit down and think, all right, where do I want my breeding operation to go? Do I want to expand my operation? Do I want to take what I have, move it into a separate building? Do I want to hire employees? Or do I want to downsize? Or do I want to just keep it the same size that I have right now? And for me, I pretty much just want to keep it at the same size for right now. I thought about expanding, but you know, with everything going on right now, I'm pretty much focused mainly on my YouTube channel with a little bit of breeding snakes on the side. I don't want my snakes to get so big, you know, where I'm breeding, you know, thousands of snakes to where I can't do YouTube videos all the time. I don't know what Bobby's doing here. He's like he's like squirming all over the place. He's like trying to go down to the floor. It's one of the things that he's been doing lately. Crazy snake. All right, so number 10. All right, number 10, you want to study up on your snakes, the husbandry and your genetics. Now, let me tell you, it always pays off to go back to the basics and study up on as far as, you know, the different types of enclosures, the different temperatures. And let me tell you, there's a lot of different opinions out there as far as ball pythons. Some people say, you know, you need a really big enclosure. Some people say you just need like a rack system. Some people say, you know, all the different substrates and the temperatures and on and on. Always is good to go back and look at all the different the conditions for keeping and breeding ball pythons and study up on all the genetics. So that is pretty much it. That is my top 10 list as far as what you can do during the off season. And Bobby's just been going crazy. I don't know what Bobby's doing today. Bobby is my 7-year-old bamboo ball python. He's usually here with me every single video. And today he's just kind of going crazy. I don't know what's gotten into him. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.